Hey guys, Beth here. So here is the intro into you getting to watch Fayetteville, Arkansas and comic book shows panel for Alison, Arngrim and the Charlotte Stewart from Little House on the Prairie. We hope you enjoy it, and if you like it, make sure you like and subscribe.
Our next guests here were icons for an entire generation of TV viewers, and I'm extremely thrilled to welcome the amazing Charlotte Stewart and Alison Arngrim. Please give them a massive round of applause.
Thought that Nellie and Miss Beadle would be best friends, right? We travel together all the time.
Yeah, we're road dogs.
Who would have thought that Nellie and Laura would have wound up being best friends in real life? First off, ladies, thank you very much for coming out to Fayetteville and joining us here at the show. It's an absolute gas to have you guys here. And I want to start with you, Alison, because before I saw my first episode of Little House on the Prairie, I had seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And the amazing Julie Dawn Cole is Veruca Salt.
Who I'm also totally buddies. We love Julie Dawn Cole.
She's an amazing human being, one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And I'm curious if when you were starting to develop, the character, were you looking at, had you seen Veruca at that point?
I had indeed seen Miss Veruca Salt, who I love it. And of course, my British friend, Barnaby, our friend Barnaby, Barnaby married in England, said, I just met Julie Dawn Cole, Veruca Salt, and I cannot believe you two aren't already friends, because Nellie Olson and Veruca Salt seriously need to hang out together. And he said, she's a lot like you. You guys are like sisters. And then I did. I came to England. I met her. I was in Paris, and I came over to England and had lunch with her and Barnaby. And, I stopped at La Durée, the macaron place in Paris, and got a huge box of, pink macaroons. Like in the song, I want pink macaroons. I got the raspberry and the strawberry. And she said, do you know Nellie's never brought me pink macaroons? I said, all this time, nobody brought you the freaking pink macaroons. Finally, somebody got it, so I brought it. Love her. I had watched her. Actually, the person, if there's anyone that I pulled things from a couple of real people. There were like 3 girls at school, one in like elementary, 2 in junior high, who were awful to me. So it was based on real people.
She loved it.
I loved it so much. But I was a huge fan of The Bad Seed with Patty McCormick. And I did much later eventually meet Patty McCormick as well, and did a photo session with her for a magazine, and love. Oh, yes, we do all hang out. Patty McCormick and Julie. Veruca Salt and Rhoda and Nellie were all totally hanging out together.
You got like silk jackets and have bad girls across the back.
We should have a team. But yeah, so I did watch The Bad Seed a lot. My friend Chrissy Norton and I would have slumber parties, and we would braid our hair and put on party dresses, because this is before Amazon. You had to go, oh, it's on, check the TV guide, it's going to be on Saturday night.
See, kids, there were only 3 stations at one point.
And so we'd schedule these things. And so we'd put on the party dresses and braid our hair and watch it, and then run around screaming, what would you give me for a basket of kisses? So I was doing cosplay in my bedroom to The Bad Seed when I was 8. So yes, I was heavily influenced, definitely by Patty McCormick.
And Charlotte, you actually had some inspiration as well, because your godmother was also a school marm of a one-room school as well.
How did you know that?
I researched.
My godmother Pauline was a teacher in a one-room school in Mendocino, California, and she told me, or my father told me, the story of, it was a very small school, but it's a lumber company, lumber town. The kids that I was in school, that she taught, were these big kids, because they worked with their parents, cutting down huge redwood trees and stuff. And they kept her in the schoolroom one day by throwing rocks at the door. And she was terrified. But one day I was having coffee with Michael Landon. It was a break or something, and I said, my godmother was a school teacher in this one-room school. And he said, oh, really? And I told him the story. And he wrote the episode where all the big boys come back from working on the farm with their dads, and they all slam their books on the floor. And Mrs. Olson comes in, she goes to the board, and we got to fire Miss Beadle. So that was the episode where Miss Beadle gets fired.
Mm. When you're shooting in Simi Valley, even in the 70s, it had to have still been a massive departure from like just shutting off the 20th century and moving back in time.
I loved it. I'll never forget the first day out in Walnut Grove in Simi Valley. We would drive way up Simi Valley, we had to park, and then a van would pick us up and drive us over the hills, because we had to shoot where there were no telephone poles or anything like that in the background. And so you go over the hill and up into the wardrobe trailer, the makeup trailer, and put on our costume and get our makeup and our wigs. So we both wore wigs. And we're all ready to go. I had my little round glasses, which were actually mine. And my own boots. I actually wore my own boots. And I would walk up the hill and get to the top of the hill, and there was Walnut Grove, the whole town. You have to walk over this little bridge because there was a creek, and I felt like I had been there before. I knew I had been there before. It was so comfortable. And then I recalled that my grandmother, Nana, my father's mother, came from Iowa in a covered wagon as a baby. So that was in my DNA somewhere. I had been like that, wore those clothes. And I always felt more comfortable in this deal than I ever did in my jeans.
We were doing like 1800s immersion because, now we didn't have cell phones yet because it's the 70s, but we went out there, and it's a Simi Valley, if anybody's been to California, it's a thriving town now, but it was kind of really bedroom community. Nobody lived there in the 70s. The freeway didn't go all the way. The 210 wasn't, the 118 wasn't finished. Mm-hmm. And so you got off the freeway and like drove on a dirt road eventually. And so that was, and you had to go drive some distance to get, the 118 didn't connect to anything. You couldn't take a freeway to it. You had to get off the freeway, drive, and then get on the 118. And there were 6 lanes to nowhere. There were no other cars. That's now a huge crowded freeway that connects to everything. But we get out there, and they had the usual dressing rooms that were the trailers, and they all have a little TV and a little radio in them. But it didn't work. We were out in Simi. There was no reception. You couldn't turn on the radio. You couldn't turn on the TV.
Aerial.
There's nothing. It's just, and they would turn off because the sound of the generators. We had no electricity. They brought out generators and everything. And they cranked up the generators and would run the air conditioning in the dressing rooms for a few minutes because they couldn't have them on all day. So when it was 110 degrees in the shade, and yes, I'm wearing petticoats and a wig, I was not happy. You get to the dressing room and it's still mighty warm, so we didn't really have air conditioning. We did not have radio, we did not have TV. The only phone was about a half a mile down the road, at the house where the caretaker was. You had to get in the van and go all the way down the road to the house where there was a landline dial phone if there was an emergency. There was a medic, and there was a guy from the fire department. He had walkie-talkies and could get to the fire department, which was great because sometimes there were giant fires in LA. And they would keep tabs on them, how close they were getting, so that we might have time to evacuate. Although the fireman did tell my Auntie Mary, when she said, well, what happens? I mean, there's only one road out, and there's the one back road. What if both roads are cut off? He said, well, if you lie face down in a ditch and cover your head, the flames will sweep over you like a prairie fire, and you should survive. Good to know.
That sounds like duck and cover.
Kids were horrified.
I actually fainted one day. We were shooting the scene where the baseball game was playing.
Oh, good Lord.
And they built these little kind of bleachers, a little just like a stage
for hours
with the chairs, and we were out there, and it was really hot. Now, as she said, we've got wigs and 2 petticoats and a wool skirt, and and it's hot. And so Michael said, let's take a break, everybody off, out, go in the shade, get some water. And they looked back and they went, why is Charlotte still sitting there? I was dead out.
She was in a coma.
Passed out, sitting.
How long were shoot days for you guys on a normal, like, because obviously it's abnormal because you're shooting daylight, you're shooting night, you can't really do day for night in a show like that.
Oh yeah.
Well,
No,
she
we
was
did
a
it.
child, though. She could only work certain
Well,
hours.
the one advantage to having the 10,000 children on the show was the bulk of the work had to be done in a 9-hour span. 4 hours work, 3 hours school, 1 hour rest and recreation, plus 1 hour lunch. Rules for the, which incidentally, child actor rules, those are in California and are not followed in many other states, where of course they now film quite a bit, and it's really kind of scary. The rules for child actors are not well enforced in other states, and sometimes on some shows. Little House was by the book, all the child actor rules were enforced, we all went to school, which is why you don't see anybody from Little House on the Prairie on TNZ with no pants.
And
Well, not with that attitude,
Michael
yeah.
Michael Landon being a family man, and all of the crew came from Bonanza. They just waited till he got his next job, and they all started over again. And a lot of times, the children in my schoolroom who weren't the principal actors were the children of the crew. So Michael wanting to go home and have dinner with his family every night, we never broke later than 6 p.m.
It was a deal because he said to the guys from Bonanza, he said, okay, we've all grown up together, we've all got families now, and he'd also made like an insane amount of money already by then. He said, I think this show, since the main character's kid, we can do this thing. And he also shot at a furious
He was
pace.
very selective. So most shows that I had done, and I had done over 50 television shows before I got on Little House on the Prairie, all the Bonanzas and detective shows and My Three Sons and everything. I mean, they worked until 11 o'clock at night. You're back at 6 in the morning, but not on Little House on the
And
Prairie.
they would waste so much time. He had a shoot list, and it was really worked out. I had people visit the set, and they said, this says you're shooting 12 pages in a day. You can't shoot 12 pages in one day. You'll be here all night. 5 o'clock, boom, done, all 12 pages in the can. And that's how we did it. We're like, go, go, go. But we would start, yes, there were times I came to work at 4 or 5 in the morning. We'd start insanely early, but they scheduled it well. And with so many kids in the scenes, maybe the adults could hang for an extra hour or 2 at most and shoot the scenes with Mom and Pop. So we were out there and we shot, because this wasn't digital, this was old 35 millimeter. So you could shoot day for night. If you turned down one of those giant flaming 10K lights, it was dark. And then most of the night stuff was on a sound stage. It was not real.
Half of the time we were on a stage at Paramount Studios. Everything you see inside the school, inside the store, inside the Ingalls house was a set built within a soundstage. So complete control.
And if you saw the Little House and it was snowing or raining, it was on a soundstage and it was not real. And this really upsets me. They're like, man, I saw it snow, it was snowing, it happened. And like a guy with flakes and
At Paramount Studios, which is one of the, and maybe still is, I don't know what they call it anymore, they had a water set, which is where they shot big pirate movies and things, big ships in the water.
Good old
So
bean tank.
it was a really deep stage, all, cement and all that. But they would fill it with water when they had a ship. Well, Michael filled it with snow. And we did the blizzard, where Miss Beadle loses the kids again.
Again. It's something to mass out comedy. Oh, that Mrs. Beatles, you've got to lose those kids again.
Sent them all home in a snowstorm. But we all had to be in this set where it was pretty cold. And our script lady her job was to keep notes for the cinematographer, for the sound guy, of things that had to be, in the script. And it was all paper, it was a binder. And her pages got wet, and she was just beside herself. Mary was just beside herself. And so she's trying to dry her pages out, before it went back in the book. I'm sitting next to Mary, and what she doesn't see is Michael Landon come up behind her with a lighter and set her pages on. She's going,
I'm buddies with a couple of continuity directors, and I can only imagine the apoplectic fit that she would have got.
Oh, Mary was just beside
And this was typical Michael. This was typical Michael. Yeah, set your script on fire? Totally. This is a guy who would set your script on fire. It was constant practical jokes and insanity. And Mary was amazing. She wore these huge hats. And there's pictures you can find, like, they're always popping up on Facebook now. And she's in this little folding chair with like pom-poms hanging off her hat with this giant binder and all that. Because remember, this is all pre-digitals. Nobody with like a, you know, an Apple thing with a little pad. No, it was a giant book, and it was all pencils and erasers, and it was insane.
About what percentage would you say you shot in Simi Valley, and how much was on the soundstage? About half and half?
Because we'd start in Simi, because you figured all the outdoor scenes are in your location, you know, in case something went wrong. So we'd start like Monday in Simi, and by Thursday we'd head over back to the soundstage. And then I was always excited when it rained, because it meant we had to go carry out for the week. I was like, yay, we're out of Simi. And then now once a year, we would go on actual location, and usually we went to Sonora in Northern California when Laura ran away from home and climbed a mountain and met Ernest Borgnine, which, considering they were supposed to be in Minnesota, means she crossed like 4 states. No mountains. That was Sonora. The choo-choo train. There's a train. It's in every movie and TV show. It was in Back to the Future. It's the same train. And it's the train in Little House. It's the same. It was like, why is the train the same number in like all these movies? They got one train. It's an 1800s train. It's beautiful. It's the only one still working, so it's in every 1800s train movie. And we go up there for that. And then we went to Arizona sometimes. Baby Carrie gets stuck in a hot air balloon. Indians, county fair. That's Arizona. Yeah.
We do have a couple of crowd mics, so if you guys have any questions, please line up. We'll roll you through as quickly. I mean, because we started early, because I wanted to make sure we had more time, and plus they bum rushed the stage and elbowed me out of the way, so I do this thing.
You can't just run doing this.
You're just lucky the rest of the cast. We're awful. It's like herding cats. You cannot control the prairie people.
Why do you think we only started with 2? We'll grow it from there from later. That'll be fine. As the show progresses, your character gets older, develops a sense of humility, shall we say. Was it a little bit of a kick in the pants to have Nancy come along as a character? Not from an acting standpoint, but just like, or even from an acting standpoint, where you're looking at it going, do they really have to Urkel me at this point?
Right. And she got my wig. They just took the wig away. Yeah, your head's about the same size. Boom. And they kept my old wig and they put it on her, which meant when Return of Nellie, when I visited and I come back for that big episode, I had to have a different wig.
Sophisticated.
And they gave me that thing that looked like a Jiffy Pop popcorn thing exploded on my head, the big white, which I guess was fat. It was like a Gibson girl do, very big at the time. But yeah, it was weird. What happened is, back in the 70s, people signed 7-year contracts a lot. And the contract ended. And a lot of people left the show then. And also, I'd been there since I was 12. So I was kind of like, I'd like to do other things, have a life. So I left. And weirdly, they called me back for a guest star role in season 9, which also like never happens in Hollywood. But when I left, they kind of said, well, all the kids have grown up. And so the Ingalls started adopting people, and then the Olsons adopted people, and so you had little Jenny with the braids, Shannon Doherty, and little Cassandra, Melissa Francis. You had baby Laura, and then they got baby Nellie with Nancy. It was like Muppet Babies version of Little House, and it was weird. Now, I would have been mortally offended, and there are fans that they're like, there can be only one, like the Highlander, and they don't like her. I like her. I would have been offended, but she was brilliant, and when I came back and met her, she was so clever. Alison Balson, her mom was a psychotherapist, so she was like really into this kid is disturbed, and she'd worked it out. She said, I grew up watching you, and when I got this job, I said, I'm not going to copy her. I'm not going to do exactly the same thing she did. So she said, you kind of went with bitchy, I went with crazy. And I was like, nailed it. So I really admired her. We sat there and discussed our characters, and she was really into it. And that was all of those horrible, horrible things, that grating, you hate me, and all that stuff she did, that was all intentional and planned. She was a very clever girl.
I love when Alison talks about how she loved that people hated her. The first day back at high school or school after the show was on the air, and she got, the other girls at school, oh, it's Nellie. She was like, yes.
Literally screamed at me from the upper levels, Bancroft Junior High, they had 2 levels. Girl, literally, I was not on campus 2 seconds, screamed at me, "You bitch!" from the rooftops.
And then they had a ride in a Hollywood Christmas parade float, and somebody threw an orange drink at her. Now she's 12 years old.
It wasn't in the can, it was in the plastic McDonald's thing.
She's a child.
Right in the
She's
face,
12
right in the
years old,
face.
Somebody threw a drink at her.
And
Did
they
they
had
get that on
me,
camera?
and it was excellent aim, the car was moving. This person had aim, and they nailed me right in the face with McDonald's.
And she said,
I said, there's like $1.75 worth of soda left here. Someone saw me and was so angry, they just went, "Yeah!" And so I said, damn, I must be good. So,
Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the only time you got the treatment from that, because I actually have a list here. Hang on. Horse manure.
yeah.
Laura punches you in the face twice.
That's like several times. How many times did you count?
I just have twice. Those are the episodes I found.
Right.
I'm sure there's
Manure.
more.
Mud,
Oh, the
yeah,
wheelchair.
Oh no.
It's the favorite Nellie episode. The Nellie fans, it's my favorite episode.
So let's talk about that. You're going through script breakdowns. Did you guys have a chance to do table reads?
No, it wasn't like sitcoms. They would get together. We were kind of like, here. They would mail it or messenger. Most of the time you got it in reasonable advance. They would come in the mail or messenger. Back in the days when couriers drop things off at your house because there was no email. But you would get it sort of in advance, and then we'd get going during the season, and it would be, and suddenly you'd be at work, and they go, by the way, this starts in 2 days, and you'd just be like, oh God. But I got in advance, and I remember reading it and just being like in hysterics. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm like pretending to be paralyzed, and just putting down a hill in a wheelchair. And I remember when we were shooting it, it's like, on what show does this happen? Did anybody on the Waltons get pushed down a hill in a wheelchair?
How do you think John Boy got that moment?
Right, yeah, Brady Bunch. They don't do this. And at child, we're like 13. And then I had, again, sitting up at night, old movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I had seen Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And Larry Germain, one of the hairdressers on the show, helped design the wig, was Betty Davis's hairdresser for years.
We did Marilyn Monroe too.
Marilyn Monroe, and Whitey, our makeup man, was Marilyn Monroe's, like through every movie.
I
Gladys,
look like Marilyn.
that's why you all look so pretty. Gladys had worked with Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, Marilyn, Linda Darnell. They'd all worked with all the huge stars. They had all these stories about Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. So they all knew Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And yes, the wig did look like Betty Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It was on purpose because it's Larry. So Melissa watched all of it. So when we're shooting that, and the old people on the set are giggling and saying, oh look, it's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, except Betty Davis is in the chair, we were getting the joke. Melissa and I were cracking up and going, yes, that is completely what we are doing. So that was fun. So we were like in on the gag. But yes, there was a stunt girl, obviously, for the main thing and the flip.
Her name is Patty Elder. She was my
Patty Elder. And and she smoked. So she'd be dressed as me walking around the set with a Marlboro. And the parents, people would turn to my poor Annie Mary and go, is Alison smoking? And I'd be sitting, I'm over here, I'm reading a book. What? No, that's my stuff.
It's standard definition, they weren't sure.
I'm like, she's 35. And so this.
Well, the camera adds 15 years.
And she's in the Nellie dress in the blue, just smoking a stomp around with a cigarette. But yes, she did the backflip and hit the water, and then I got in the water. But I did have to be in the chair, and they took me to a different hill. It was actually next to the little house that was much longer, but less steep, so they could get longer footage of me screaming as I went down the hill in the chair. So I did have to go down a hill in the chair.
Was the camera attached to the foot of the chair?
So they did a dolly thing. They set up wooden boards and put them on a dolly and literally rolled with me.
Right.
Like right there. And then they had a couple of ropes steering the wheelchair for like 2 minutes, but not much. The chair wasn't on a dolly or on boards, just the camera. Because they had to not break the camera. Actors, different story. And there was no seatbelt, there was no safety equipment of any kind, and I was wearing my nightgown, underwear, and bedroom slippers. and that was it. And I had
Did
a
you
real
have a
problem.
cast on your
I
leg?
did, because I had fallen off my skateboard, like right before we shot.
She had a real cast.
Real broken arm, which Michael was, as Michael said, do it again and I'll break the other one. But then he gave me this great autograph. He autographed my cast. It was awesome. So they took put an 1800s cast over my real cast. So I have a real broken arm, and I'm banging down and hitting rocks in this thing with no seatbelt, and I'm like in my underwear and a nightie. So I was completely terrified. So that's not totally acting. It's awesome.
Then Patty did the spill.
Patty, she did a backflip. She
did a-
shot out of that chair.
She was great.
Mid-air
She
somersault.
took a fall for me too. Miss Beadle's horse runs away.
Yeah.
And the wagon, and you see me flying out of the wagon and hitting the ground. Everybody totally thought it was me, even when, you know.
It's incredible. It looks like you're dead.
She looked just like me. And everybody thought, oh my God, Charlotte's a stunt woman?
Love the horseback ride. Okay, I sat on a horse once, and 4 guys on the ground held the horse's legs while I sat there going, can I get off now, please? Can I get off now? So that was it, like giddy up and then whoa, and that was it. The rest, I was on a fake horsey thing that rock where I went giddy up. And the rest was Patty, putting out her cigarette and jumping on a horse in my wig and tearing off the countryside.
Charlotte, I'm curious if, because of your role as I keep saying school marm, and that's really not the accurate way.
Teacher.
Teacher, yes. I have full respect. I'm curious if you wound up having kind of a protective viewpoint of all of these child actors. Yeah.
Absolutely. I usually only worked with the children. I had very few scenes with any adult member of Little House on the Prairie. And I don't know, maybe that's where you and I bonded. I think so.
And we loved her. I mean, okay, remember that first reunion we did up in Sonora?
Yeah.
We all wound up crying like every half an hour. It was in the 90s, one of our first cast reunion things, and we sort of
seen each other.
Some of us like here and there, this many of us hadn't been together since it ended. I mean, there were people there who hadn't spoken to each other in years, and we were all like suddenly in a room together freaking out. And they had panels, and they started asking her, did you feel like a teacher? And she started saying yes, and how much she loved us. And a bunch of us kids were like, Matt was there and everything. And we went, and we love you. You were our teacher. We love you. And we all started sobbing openly in front of people. And it was really embarrassing.
But that's got to be heartening to you, Charlotte, for being able to still have that reaction from people you worked with.
Like I say, I mostly worked with the children, and they would break, and the kids would go out, and there was a whole yard outside at Simi Valley where they could play, and there were swings, and they would do those hoops or whatever.
Right. We had 1800s games.
It wasn't hula hoop.
It was a stick.
It was a stick metal thing. But yeah, I would just hang around with them because that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
I think they respected me as an adult, but I never pulled that on them.
Mm-hmm.
But then, a few
Except
years
for Willie.
later,
Oh, no.
I got to be 15 and a half, 6, I had my learner's permit, had a car. And by then, we had found out that she was Mary X in Eraserhead. Yes. And the other kids found out. So I was the eldest at like 16. And so Gilbert was 14, and gosh, Matt was younger than that. He's younger than her, so he was like 11 or 12. And so Matt Laboratoe was Albert, and Pat Laboratoe was Andy Garvey. And both the baby Carries, Robin and Rachel, and Melissa, who were all children, come to my dressing room and go, okay, you have a car. So here's the deal. We're gonna lie and tell our parents that we're just having a slumber party at your house. And then you're going to take us at midnight to the New Art Theater in Santa Monica and like sneak us in, and we're all going to go see Charlotte Stewart in Eraserhead. And this R-rated, terrifying, dark David Lynch film. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not taking you guys to it because you'll all freak out and have nightmares and be calling your parents and we'll all get caught. And I am so not telling all of your parents, yes, I totally took your under 14 child to see Eraserhead in the middle of the night in Santa Monica. No, that not happened. Oh, they all wanted to ride in the back of my pickup truck with their seatbelts and like, sure, yeah. I'm totally doing that. No.
It's the late 70s. I did that all the time, and I turned out fine.
But they were so upset because we loved you so, and they were like, she's seen Eraserhead. It's all we're going. We're so going. I'm like, no,
I
you're
am
not.
so still getting it. You did Eraserhead?
Weren't you doing Eraserhead while you were doing Little House?
Yes. I was working, David Lynch only worked after midnight. He was at the American Film Institute in Beverly Hills. He was a student there, but by the time we were halfway through Eraserhead, he had used up all the film he was allotted. And his sister-in-law is Sissy Spacek. And her husband was the prop guy on Eraserhead. So she paid for all the rest of the film for Eraserhead so he could finish the film, because he only shot 35mm black and white. And forget where I was going with that. But, oh yeah, it took us a long time to, I thought I was going into a student film that was going to take me 4 days, maybe a week. And it took 3 months. It took 3 years. I was still doing Eraserhead while I was playing Miss Beadle.
That's why you were so tired.
Huh?
You were exhausted.
Well, we worked from midnight to 6 in the morning.
Well, no wonder you misplaced all those kids all the
I
time.
did, I lost them all.
I felt so sorry for you when you lost the kids that time.
Which time?
Well, there was, when Carrie fell down the well.
Carrie fell down the well.
Yeah, Carrie Michael landed and said, Miss Beadle kills the kids again.
And baby Carrie's played by twins. It's like
Rachel.
It's like Rachel, Lindsay, Sydney, Robin. So it's like Lindsay, Sydney, or Robin, Rachel. Rachel did the scene where she fell down the hole, and Robin wasn't the one in the scene when they pull her out. So Rachel likes to say she's still technically at the bottom of the mine.
Well,
She's still there.
Was there a specific day for mail call on the set, or did they bring mail to the set for each of the actors?
Did you get fan mail on
I
the set?
never got a fan letter.
What? You get fan letters at home?
Let me
you got
tell
fan
you,
letters.
when we were doing Little House on the Prairie, we, you know, maybe it'd been on the air for a year or something. We didn't even know we were popular. Honest to God, we didn't.
There wasn't a whole lot of internet traffic about the show at that point.
No, there was no one.
Facebook.
Right. And I remember distinctly in Hollywood, other actors, producers, directors going, Little House in the Prairie.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, where are they today?
Yeah. Okay.
We're still on the air 45 years later.
People in LA, New York all said they didn't watch it. Everyone else in the country did. They would lie. They would like pull the blinds and watch the show because they would say, "I never watch it," and then you'd say, "The raccoon episode." And the other one is, okay, I'll just call them out. I know it's so mean. Okay, there was this TV show called Family with Sadie Thompson. It was a brilliant show. It won all the Emmys. My friend Quinn Cummings was on it. Christy Nicole was on it. Is it even out on DVD?
Yeah, because I have it.
You have it? You're like the only one, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, is it on rerun? No. Is it streaming on Amazon? No. Is it playing in 140 countries? And are there dozens of fan clubs on Facebook? No, it is not. Do people dress up on Halloween as the cast of Family? No, they do not. So,
They're too busy cast up as the cast of 8 is enough.
yeah, right. But no, so we got this weird niche where we hit a nerve, and we're in 140 countries and just
And
endless
then-
reruns, and they love us.
And then now, well, I don't know how long after, a lot of the Laura Ingalls Wilder museums around the country started paying attention that they were selling more books because of our television show and started inviting us to, Minnesota and Missouri and North Dakota and all, and that's where we started traveling together.
Started working the circuit. You know who loved it was Dabs Greer, who's the Reverend Alden, and Kevin Hagen, who's Doc Baker. They started working that prairie circuit and go to Minnesota and Missouri like a lot. And I found out about it from then, and I started going to Minnesota. And then we all started going. We started hanging out.
Alison calls back, you've got to go. We're going to Minnesota.
And
what's in Minnesota?
Then the 40th anniversary, they went nuts and had like 11 of us there. And then eventually, I found out that it's huge in France, La Petite Maison,
Japan.
Japan, and Argentina for some reason. And so I went to France, and then I found out they loved Nelly, and so then eventually we had mini cast reunions in France. Gotcha to France.
In France.
So it's quite the thing. Yeah.
In France, are you the hero of the story?
Yes. As I said, they don't think Nellie Olson's mean, they think she's French.
Because she speaks French.
And maintenant, je parle français, je fais un spectacle. I'm sorry, the poor, do you speak French? I'm like, no. I speak French, and I do a show now, a comedy show in French,
When
I
she
just got
was
back.
12 years old, she did her comedy stand-up routine at
15, but that's still stupid
15.
young.
It was
So.
her, she was a little girl on stage doing stand-up comedy at the comedy club.
Mhm.
Which was the cellar or the store?
The Comedy Store, the Improv, the
On
Laugh
Sun-
Factory
on
was
Sunset
also, yeah,
Boulevard.
So
yeah.
you went to Mitzi Shore and said, I got this act.
Yeah.
Mitzi Shore was, okay, well, anyone who worked with us, horrifying, everyone.
Yes.
And you know what's interesting, when they did the documentary about the Comedy Store, everyone who talked about Mitzi immediately did their Mitzi impersonation. To a man, every comic guy would say, well, Mitzi said to me, you know, I think they shouldn't be going. And she was kind of awful, and she's
There was no kinda about it. She
Yeah.
was horrible. She was a
Mrs.
Nelly.
Olson on steroids.
Yes.
She's mean, and she ran a comedy store. But I prevailed. She persisted, as they say, and I kept doing it. And then I got a one-woman show I created that, like, in 2002, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch. It's like all true stories.
That's her book.
And then the book.
Got it today.
And then the French version, Confession d'une gosse de la Prairie. Means the same thing. And now I have the Nellie Olson's Trunk of Treasures, or Le Malo Trésor de Nellie Olson. And yeah, so it's really weird.
But now you have to learn in Portuguese since it's so, it's.
I know,
Yeah.
right? I gotta do Portuguese.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
I
yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
Child actors in the 70s
Yeah.
versus child actors in the
there
80s.
goes.
Is it going on? There we go. Okay. Just a quick question. How protective and how insulated were you as child actors by your families or by, I know Michael Landon was a huge...
Thank God we had Michael in it. Because the show was being run, I noticed that they were following the rules more, I think, in the 60s and 70s, people knew. And then in the 80s, things kind of fell apart. And that's when you had, like, different strokes. A lot of people, they did not follow the rules on their sets. And I've heard stories. I mean, our whole crew, they were super protective. If a guy had bothered me, I mean, I could have gone to the crew and said, that man is bothering me, and I don't think they'd have found the body. Whereas I heard from, like, girls, even on the Waltons, that the crew were catcalling and whistling. And so it was very different on our set. My parents were in show business. My father was a manager. My mother was the voice of Casper the Friendly Ghost, Sweet Polly Purebred, Underdog's girlfriend, Davy of Davy and Goliath, and Gumby.
And her father managed Liberace.
It's true. So I was in show business. So I was not really protected. I was exposed to kind of everything. But on the other hand, they knew that the business was scary and everything. So I was also protected in that way, that I knew what was going on. Some of the parents in Little House were uber protective. I know. Well, Melissa Sue Anderson, who was Mary's mom, was so overprotective. She wasn't allowed to play with me and Melissa Gilbert. And then Melissa Gilbert's mom was protective. So we had a more protective group on Little House than on other shows. Because as we grew up and started meeting other child actors and heard the horror stories, we all feel we really dodged a bullet by being on Little House.
So we actually skipped that because we didn't, Charlotte said she didn't get any fan mail. I'm curious.
any mail at all.
That's still really, that boggles my mind. Because I would imagine that every character would have gotten, or every actor would have gotten at least something along those lines. So,
Now, mostly my mail came to my agent and manager to my dad, so I got it home. And it was mixed. Some of it was, there was the guy who said you need to be spanked across your bare insolent buttocks. We kept that running, sent a copy to the police. But, so I had the weirdos, and then I had people I hate you, I love you, I love you, I hate you. But they generally love me, and we sent autographs dutifully. I was like a teenager, but my mother said it's time, and I'd sit down and dutifully sign the autograph pictures. But I only got mail on the set once or twice. They did sometimes send it to NBC. So there were guys like the Pages, the darling guys in the suits, would sometimes say, here's yours. And if it was for me or Melissa Gilbert or Melissa Sue, there were a bunch of guys, and NBCU's job was to open it because it was for children and they were being protected back then. And they would open it, and if it was a freak, they would warn the parents and they wouldn't give it to the children. And Melissa Sue and Melissa Gilbert did not see like half their fan mail because they had weirdos. And the guys once at lunch, I hung out with them and they said, they said, come on, she's the little blind girl. All the freaks write to the poor little blind girl. We got a guy in prison who won't stop writing to her. And they said, we censor this, we go through the mail, we don't give it to her or mom, we send it to the prison warden and said, don't let this guy out, blah, blah. He said, but we do get some pervert mail for the girls, and we do not give it to them. And I said, well, wait, what about mine? Oh, we just give you all your mail. And I'm like, that's I'm getting all these horrible letters. They're like, yeah, we figure you're fine with it.
That's
So.
all. We hate you.
Yeah, we just send on the weirdo letters to you. Like,
I'm curious, Charlotte, for the amazing CV that you've got. What distinct, other than the setting and the insular capsule in time that Little House was, what distinguished that show from the other shows that you'd worked on? And what did you take away from that experience?
Respect. I felt respected. I was one of the only adults that worked with all the children, their parents. I spent more time with their parents and guardians than I did, really with the kids. But the way Michael Landon ran the show and respected his actors and gave them, it was really it was a blessing when he was directing, because half the time he was playing jokes on us and laughing. He had the greatest laugh. Oh my God, he was just
like a girl.
He was so wonderful to work with. I had worked on Bonanza, but I had no scenes with him. So the first time I met him was when I auditioned for Miss Peeble.
okay, she has to do the audition story. Do the audition story.
I'll do the audition. Okay, I heard I was going in for a Western, it was going to be a series, and it had something to do with Michael Landon. It's all I knew. So I walk into the waiting room, and there's all these women there in bonnets and old West dresses and long skirts, and I'm in my jeans and my tie-dye t-shirt, I was in Topanga, what can I say?
73.
I was a hippie. And so I walked in the room, and there's 5 men, one behind the big desk, and then, 3, 4, 5, and then there's Michael Landon. Oh my God, you cannot miss Michael Landon. If there were 50 people in the room and Michael Landon was there, there's something about him that just glowed. I don't know what it was, but he had that special thing. So Michael Landon. And so my audition was for Mary and Laura's first day at school, where I welcome them and they come up to my desk, and and Laura tries to tell me that she doesn't know how to read. And I go, it's okay. So anyway, my audition was that. So I walk in and I eyed the room and I looked at the producer and I said, would you mind if I sat behind your desk? And they all looked at each other like, okay. And we got up and moved over, and Michael was giggling in the corner. And I got over there and I sat, and they're all still kind of looking at each other like, what does she know? And I went, be quiet. They be quiet. Michael started laughing, but quietly. I don't know. And then I did the scene. And I left and I went, oh my God. I just told Michael Landon to shut up. I didn't come in prairie clothes. Before I got home, I had the part. They called my agent, she called me, I had the part. Sometimes your instincts just kind of kick in. The same instinct that hit me when I was doing Twin Peaks and I wore the happy face button to Laura Palmer's funeral. That was, it was midway through the series, it was early on. They put me in my wardrobe, which is a very severe gray suit, to go to the funeral. As I was walking out of my house, I looked over and I went, oh, who knows? Put it in my pocket, got to wardrobe, they put me in this gray tweed suit, my hair all pulled back behind my ears, and I just went, nobody noticed. Nobody noticed the whole day we were shooting that Betty Briggs was wearing a happy face button.
Who was directing that episode? Do you remember?
It was a woman director, and I don't remember right
Do you
now.
know
I don't
all
remember. It was not Mike.
Okay.
It wasn't David Lynch. He would have noticed.
Yeah.
David Lynch would have definitely noticed.
Yeah,
He would
have
notice. Now, Charlotte,
you know who noticed?
I'm not sure if we can actually do this or not, but if you
Exactly.
everybody else says Mitzi Shore, I have
You know
David
who
Lynch.
noticed? The fans noticed, and I started getting fan mail with happy face buttons. Now they have a tarot card with the cast of Twin Peaks.
No, shut up.
And I've got a happy face this big.
I want that.
So it's all out.
No, we did watching parties from the pilot on, and we froze frame it because on a VHS, but it was a decent day, and we froze. She's wearing a happy face button.
Really?
That is absolutely.
Awesome. But that was so Betty.
Yes,
Betty is
100%.
the eternal optimist.
We're-
That's why in season 3, when everything is going haywire and there's monsters out there and a killer is so awful and these horrible things are happening, episode 9, there's Betty in her house welcoming her son, who is now a deputy sheriff. I mean, it was home, it was warm, it was Betty. And I've had so many people say, oh my God, it felt so good to see Betty after all this horror,
I don't want to steal anything from the Twin Peaks panel because that's going to be
Okay, that's your other thing.
But I mean,
She's a twofer.
No, but somebody else snaked that from me, so I'll ask as many Twin Peaks questions as I can on this. But first off, it was wonderful to see you in the return, and I'm not going to say more because I will go down the rabbit hole on that.
Okay.
Alison, there was a quote from one of your directors on Little House that, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, where we weren't sure about Alison because she was so shy and withdrawn, and she blossomed as an actress, but it was so hard to get a read on her. And I'm curious, knowing you now,
It seems odd, doesn't it?
it seems like diametrically opposed. So, were you that shy then, or was that just
Oh, no.
a feeling that people got that was incorrect?
When I tell people that I am pathologically shy, I get kind of like screams of laughter, not because they're like, what? Get out of here. I was very shy as a child. Get my book, read all about it, but it's true. I was very shy, I was bullied at school, I was just miserable as a kid, and I was quite shy. Which is why my audition was a hoot too, because I got there and I normally was all these sweet little girls you audition for. Yes, mother, yes, father. And I was kind of like, bleh, and grossed out by that. And so here was this girl who was awful and was telling everyone where to go. And I was like, this is kind of fun. I remember turning to my father saying, it's not a normal audition. This girl, she's a bitch. And my father said, what? And I read it for him, and he said, don't change a thing. You go read it exactly like that. He said, don't even look at the pages anymore. Just go in. And it was the same thing, Michael and the guys, and of course I read my home speech, and they'll scream with
My
laughter.
house is the very best house.
Oh, of Walnut Grove. And they said, can you do it again? And I said, yes, what do you want me to change? And they said, nothing, just the thing about the house again. And I was hired on the spot. So I could play this uptight girl, and I was able to release all of this stress, all of this anger. I had been abused as a child, and here was all this rage, and I suddenly had somewhere to put it. And I vented it all as Nellie and threw things and yelled and screamed, and it did. And then, on the set, it was really weird. My agent got a call because I was being so shy. She's being too withdrawn. Is she okay? And she's not talking to people. So I was told, could you try? So I kind of put her. But as a young girl, I was reading about other actresses, and Nancy Walker, who played Rhoda's mom and did the Bounty paper towel commercials, and very tough, brassy broad, pathologically shy. Bette Midler, pathologically shy, overcame it to become the woman she is today. And I started reading about all these shy people who wound up in stand-up comedy and played these wild, brassy characters. So I started what I call the Bette Midler School of Overcompensation. And at 12, 13 years old, said, okay, I'm just gonna, if I wasn't shy, what would I do now? And kind of like went, hi, and started doing this. And then between that and Nellie, by the time I was 15 and a half, I was on stage at the Comedy Store. Not really easy to do if you're pathologically shy. So I've actually spent my life sort of fighting this, and I like shy people, and I always tell them, I said, no, you can do, you're basically faking it. But it does work. Also, my Auntie Marion, you know my lovely Auntie Marion, she took me to the set, pathologically shy. She said, oh, no, when you go to parties, you know, I hate it at parties, because you have to talk to people. She said, but I found out nobody really listens, and they all want to talk about themselves. So when I'm at a party, I get my tea, and I say to someone, oh, and what do you do?
And you're off to the races.
And they go, and I go, no, really? And then, she said, oh, it's marvelous. They'll go on for hours. So yeah, there's tricks. There's tricks of the trade, and you can, you know. And now I have this wonderful life and career. But I've actually fought shyness all my life. And when I was a kid, I was mortified, terrified of everyone.
So would you say now you're an extrovert-facing introvert?
Apparently, yes. I'm an exploded introvert. Like all.
And I am exactly the opposite. I was a very bad girl.
She stole a car when she was 3. You got to get her book. She stole a car.
I wrecked my parents' car when I was 3. No, but it went on from there. I'm a very bad girl, and you'll read about it in my book, if you get my book, who played nothing but all she is. I played the nice girl in everything I did in my personal life. I was a hippie in Topanga, I smoked dope, you know, I mean, I did all
Jim Morrison.
I did all of it.
I'm just saying, Jim Morrison.
Wow.
I'm listening.
We're all listening.
Jim was my drinking buddy.
Oh.
He was extremely shy. And I had a
The Lizard King.
clothing store called the Liquid Butterfly, where I made vests and tie-dye and peasant skirts and all of that. And it was upstairs across the street from Elektra Records. And I came in one day, and Jim Morrison was standing in my store looking out the window at Elektra Records. And I just pretended like he's any other guy. And we ended up going for drinks. And then he became my drinking buddy, and I had to take him home millions of times. And then he came to a point in his life, and this is in the book too. He was arrested in Florida for indecent exposure. He was facing prison, and he wanted to get out of town. He called me up and he said, I want to get out of town. You want to go? And I said, yeah. So we took off for 4 days. He didn't know where he wanted to go, so I told him. We went up the Highway 1 in California. I stopped at all these places that I knew. We stayed with friends that I knew. I took him to the Hearst Castle. In my book, there's a picture of him eating a hot dog at the Hearst Castle.
Yeah, the two of them, they're like stopping for ice cream. There's pictures in her book of like her and Jim Morrison like hanging.
Well, it's because there wasn't TMZ with a person on camera at every street corner at that point.
Nobody knew him. Nobody recognized him. I took him to be with friends. He was Jim. They had not a clue who he was. And he dropped me off, and 6 months later, he was gone. And I never saw him again. Yep. Anyway, I've had a very interesting life.
We're gonna have to talk much more later. I'm a beach kid, so that whole scene, not just LA, but Haight-Ashbury and all those.
I lived in Haight-Ashbury.
You did?
Yep.
Oh, you guys are gonna get bored on this. I'm gonna be here forever. Ladies, thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon and for all weekend long. Now remember, there's tables are set up over in the city center. Please
Side
go
by
visit
side.
them. Well, I can't imagine them separating you guys for anything.
It's like the Twin Peaks section goes here, and then it's her, and then it's me. Like the Little House section starts. She's the segue between the two. And we have books. We have her book.
We have her book.
Bad Girl's Guide. Little House in the Hollywood Hills: A Bad Girl's Guide to Being Mary X, Miss Beadle, and Me.
That's it.
And I'm Confessions of a Prairie Bitch: How I Survived Being Nellie Olson and Learned to Love Being Hated. And both our books are available. And she sews. She has the bags, and we have photos. I have candles. I have scented candles.
Yeah. And I'm a sewer. I sew every day. I make tote bags to raise money for a cancer program because I'm a survivor. So.
Charlotte, Stewart, and Alison, thank you so much.